Man, I've got my tea and I'm good to go. Great to see you, Johnny. Thank you for having me again. Got some exciting stuff to talk about.
And can you show everybody that cup there that they can purchase from your Shopify store? Because it's an
Yeah, this is my
official.
Therapy Bites podcast cup.
There you go. There you go. And you should all be listening to the Therapy Bites podcast. Still, that lisp, I'm going to have to practice my therapy. Anyway, so today we're going to discuss something very interesting. Russell Brand's ex-wife, Katy Perry, is approaching 40, is one of America's richest self-made women, and she's got there by being very controversial. So we're going to discuss the psychology of success, excess, and duress today. What can you tell us about Perry to start off then, Dr. Heath?
Well, I had someone ask me about the video that she put out, which is just really, really over the top, including, a lot of busts and butts and even a row of ladies standing at a row of urinals in a men's restroom, which was quite shocking. I wasn't quite sure what to think about that. And evidently I was in such shock that when somebody said, "Did you see this other aspect of it?" I said, I completely missed that, and maybe I should go back and rewatch it, or maybe it's just too much and once was enough. But I think if we look back over Katy Perry's career, we can see that behind the glitz and the glamour, that like everybody, she struggles just like every other human. And here is the thing that most people don't understand, is that often fantasy beats reality. And I'm sorry, reality beats therapy. Often reality beats therapy. And it really does so quite predictably, reliably, and every time reality beats fantasy. Third place actually has value above first place. Johnny, one of my favorite quotes was spoken by one of the most famous Batman villains in that wonderful Christopher Nolan movie, where Bane says to Batman, "Success has defeated you." And I think that that's what celebrities run up against, because what I speak of often when I'm dealing with addiction recovery, which I do quite frequently with my executive coaches, coaching that I do, is that the problem is that too much success can be a bad thing, because success often leads to excess, and as we said in our title, leads to a good amount of duress. And so I like to point out the examples of one of my favorite all-time rock stars, which is behind me, and that is Elvis Presley. And then another is Prince, and another is George Michael. And the same
Mm-hmm.
thing really killed all three of them, and that is actually excess, because they failed to begin to differentiate between what is success and what is excess. And Epicurus, we'll talk about him in a moment. But yeah, I mean, in show business, that's one of the worst things, is the duress of excess.
Wow, the way you say that there as well, it makes so much sense. We were talking about George Michael last night as we were listening to Spinning That Wheel, and even his music kind of like projects that out as well. Projects I'm in danger and I'm doing dangerous things and I know it and I can't stop it and I can't control it and I'm not in control. A lot of his songs project that out. It's very interesting. All of those Prince, Elvis, George Michael, all got very sad stories as well attached to them, but also will give you hope and give you a feeling of beauty inside that not many things can actually give you. It's very intriguing. Now, Katy Perry she's always gone out of her way to be very controversial. It's easier to get away with being controversial when you're 20s. Is that so, Dr. Heath?
I think it really is because it comes with, and I'll say this term carefully, it comes with a certain amount of ignorance. And ignorance can really be a very beautiful thing. Many philosophers have said, be very careful looking into the abyss because the abyss looks back at you. And so as we get older, we begin to see the hollow nature of all those materialistic pursuits. Madonna comes to mind, the great material girl of the 80s that everyone was in love with. But eventually, as Solomon said, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. So an important thing to understand about humans is we first tend to perceive comfort and on top of that, pleasure as safety. We think that if we don't have comfort and even pleasure, that we're not safe. And so what we're really looking for is not more pleasure. We're really looking for more safety. And so it's kind of like, I guess it's Garth Brooks' song, looking for friends in all the wrong places, and friends in low places. And so the human brain can be engineered to be a bottomless pit, always looking for more, or, and this is such a wonderful, mystical, mysterious thing that, honest to goodness, Johnny, when I talk about it, I really get chills running down the back of my neck and my spine. We can train our brains at that self-limiting can be very pleasurable. Just the ability to say no to ourselves, just the ability to say, this is as far as this will go and no farther. There are things that I will do, there are things that I won't do, and this is my boundary for myself with what I will choose to do to get pleasure. And that's something that movie stars and pop stars, they seemingly don't know how to do. They could really probably invest $1 million a year in a great coach to call them to task, and they would actually save their own lives if they would do that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing when you talk about that. I think about my relationship with my best friend, my best friend, the man monkey, as many people know him as, and he's a beautiful human being. He's got a lot more self-control than I do. I am not someone who finds it easy to get up and go to do exercises, do weights, or go for a run. I've also, I can have a bad diet, and when I ask him, "Oh, do you want this? Do you want some chocolate, or do you want this a bit of cake?" and he says no, and he's able to refuse those things, I feel this pang of jealousy come from me that he can actually resist such things. And then that is followed by, the guilt and the shame that comes with it, that will end up meaning you'll eat more cake to try and get over that guilt and shame in that sense. Do you understand what I mean by that? I think you do.
Yeah, it really leads to its own momentum that the more you give yourself, the more you're going to want. And I like to quote the famous American billionaire, Malcolm Forbes, when somebody asked him, how much more money do you want to make? And he said, just one more dollar. And so how many more pieces of cake do you want to have? Just one more piece of cake. How many beers would you like to have? It's just the one more mindset that can be so incredibly deadly. So as an actionable takeaway for this, I would encourage your viewers to challenge themselves with saying no to themselves. Challenge themselves to watching a certain amount of TV and then turning it off. I challenge them to, when their loved one comes in the room and wants to have a conversation, to take that remote and hit the off button. No more TV. It's time for a conversation. There's a thing called I can't remember. Let's say it's called sleep anger or revenge insomnia. Yeah, that's it. Revenge insomnia, where people will think that they were not given all the TV time that they were due, and so they will sit there and watch TV into the wee hours or scroll social media until the wee hours. And so cutting that off and saying no to ourselves, the brain will actually grab a hold of that and make you better and better and better at self-control. And so this idea we're talking about really comes from Epicurus, the Epicureans. And Epicurus is often misunderstood as advocating hedonism, in the sense of pursuing all pleasures. But actually, what he emphasizes is the pursuit of moderate, sustainable pleasures, but also the avoidance of pain. And here's where I would differ from Epicurus, and that is realizing that discomfort, even pain, does not equal danger. And so, for instance, right now I'm fasting. I have been for 2 days. I'll get to go out for a date night tonight and eat something nice and all that. But just the ability to deprive myself of something has really, really wonderful effects on the brain. And if I didn't do that, I would get very, very out of shape with being able to say no to myself and no to things which are destructive to me.
Oh my God, I'm going to have to watch this episode back again and again to be able to pick up all of these notes, because honestly, these are all things that are really helpful in my own life. Getting back to Katy Perry, though, how do or at least to people of her ilk, you could say, how do the public's perception of controversial change as the subject of their attention gets older?
Well, I think that there's many factors to that. I think that there's a limit to how many times you can enjoy hearing a song back to back to back to back on the radio. And so overexposure really in the brain, in the little circuits between longitudinal fibers in the brain, synapses, actually suffer a receptor downgrade. And so we're really callousing over our ability to enjoy something fully if we overexpose ourselves to that thing. And it's really kind of I'll say this a bit of a snarky shock jock way, it's a bit of a sexual psychology of the brain where young men think, and I certainly did, when I first got married, that it was just wham bam every day, all day long, not realizing that it is treating many things in life like dessert that leaves them as enjoyable as a dessert. And if you do anything too much, including, Katy Perry or sex or, drinking or other things, that really it turns into misery and you lose all of the allure about that. And so I think the mistake that Katy Perry is making is it's too much, it's over the top, and she thinks that more is going to get more and more attention, and eventually people just get tired of it.
Yeah, that again comes down to excess, doesn't it? It does. Is Katy Perry actually in control of her life, or is she mostly propelled by what others expect of her?
I think that she is propelled by what she thinks other people expect of her. And if I were talking to Katy Perry, I would say, put your character first. Put your character first, and the rest will take care of the rest. And one of my, and I know he's not Katy Perry, of course, but there are many actors out there, and one of those famously played Hannibal Lecter. Sir Anthony Hopkins is an actor that into his later years, people are still just enthralled. I certainly am, by Sir Anthony Hopkins, because he has always put character first, and that's what so many movie stars don't. But in your own life, putting character first means that people know who you are, they see you as an authentic person, and they know what to expect, what not to expect, and that you will always be you regardless of the glitz and the glamour and the hot, shiny lights of Hollywood or Bollywood or some other stage. And so, great conversation, Johnny. Thank you so very much. That's very interesting. I appreciate you pulling those thoughts out of me. I think it's one of the things that we often leave behind in raising children, is teaching them that this can be fun, but fun has its limits, and then it becomes pain, even danger to us.
Don't go changing, Dr. Heath. Thank you very much for coming on, and keep being authentic. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All the best, my friend. Love you, brother. Bye-bye.